I mean, I don't have a whole lot really to open up with other than just obviously getting through here, early part of league play, trying to establish a little bit of a rhythm both ways, but more so offensively, and continue to work at it. Key is as you go through this league, is not getting discouraged, or when you win, not getting too excited because next game is the hardest game you prepare for. So that's the approach we're taking.
Do you have any updates on Musa or Avery? I'll start there.
So Musa, better today, able to put a little bit more weight on it. We sent him to get an MRI today, just to be totally sure, and to give him a little bit more piece that there's nothing structural, which we're confident there isn't. We did 2 X-rays already, haven't seen anything, but wanted to make sure. Because again, you're balancing this thing, man. It's certainly about getting him back for us, but it's also about making sure we're conscious about the long term for his future and his prospects of continuing to play basketball beyond here. So, I think he's better. He's doing a little bit more, but still not in practice yet. And so, MRI hopefully we'll have today, and then if he's able to practice tomorrow, then maybe he can give us something on Saturday.
You have down Avery?
Avery's better. Same thing. I mean, his is kind of just a nagging. It was swollen pretty good on Saturday last week. Swelling got down Sunday some, and Monday a little bit more. It was still swollen. He had it taped up on Tuesday in the game. Then we're off yesterday, so it's taking time, normal kind of recovery time. He has practiced. Obviously, there's some things you can do with, especially if it's not your dominant hand, but it does affect, being able to pass on target all the time. Sometimes catching the ball is difficult, or obviously having to change directions with the ball as a ball handler. But you have a hard time keeping that kid off the court. And so we'll do the same in terms of long-term thinking about his future, because we don't think you can make it worse. But obviously we won't put him in harm's way if we think that he needs to sit, and we'll sit him.
You mentioned the offensive consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Is some of the struggles there the last couple of games of those guys being hurt? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, again,
I don't want to pin it on that, but
yeah, I mean, I've never, I don't think, and you guys have covered me for a while, probably Marshall the longest at this point. I don't do excuses. I just, we didn't play well enough to win on the road, and at the end of the day, we didn't shoot the ball well enough. We got some good looks. I mean, in the first half, we had a few layups that you just got to make. In the second half, we got a few layups that you got to make, and then the turnovers are crushing us because the other day we shot poorly, but we added the turnovers also. We did do a pretty good job offensive rebounding. So, what you got to understand is that's going to happen. Bryce had been shooting really well, had all shooting game. It's part of kind of how the game is played. I'm confident that we got the right guys taking the right shots for the most part, and then we'll continue to build off that.
You'd mentioned that it's difficult to, kind of stay, not get too high, not get too low. How do you kind of keep them focused from doing that when every game in this league is kind of high caliber in the way it is?
Yeah, it's not easy because there's a lot of noise around these kids all the time, and the world we live in today, there's no middle ground. Unfortunately, it's either the best or the worst of everything. And it's unfortunate that you can't say, this was a tough performance tonight, and still be able to draw back and say, but there's some progress being made in this area or this area. There is none of that, and they hear it and they feel it. And so for us as a staff, we just got to give them the actual data. We're better, we're playing better. We've been able to get something out of Bernie the last couple games. That's a pretty significant sign for us in terms of another body that we can throw in there, getting through 14 more games in this conference. Caleb Asbury, who was out for a little while, seems to be getting back in offensive rhythm himself, which is really, really good for us. Because again, he's primarily here to be another offensive weapon. So just context, man, putting context around all the noise that surrounds the extremes, and trying to get them to understand that, there's a lot of opportunities still in front of us. There's still a lot of things we can accomplish. But, we have missed a few opportunities already. And so we got to start finishing games a little bit better.
How much of what John talked about, the not getting discouraged, is on the coaching and the coaching staff, and how much of that just needs to come from the players?
Ah, man, that's a great question. I don't know if I have a right answer because I don't know if I think we're all in it. We're in it together, you know. And obviously, in a lot of ways, we put the game plans together. You know, we talk about how we're going to approach it offensively, defensively. You know, but there is some truth to the fact that you got to go out there with courage and play this game like you really believe you're good. Just going back to last game, I mean, Marquise Noel shoots his first three of the game from 28 feet, and ball's halfway to the goal, and he's already running down the court with his three fingers up. And that's not what I would do, but that's supreme confidence in what you're doing out there. I mean, and he shot a couple from further back than that one during the game. And then not lost on me because the finish was phenomenal, but to have the courage to throw that pass when he did late in the game, when it's a three-point game. I mean, it's not like it's 18 and it's over and they, you know, it's. I thought it was going out of bounds when it first left his hands, to be perfectly honest. And then obviously the kid makes a phenomenal finish on it, but you got to play this game with that level of not carelessness, because that wasn't really careless, but belief in that what you're doing is good enough. And ultimately, from a player standpoint, that's what you got to be able to do even when you're struggling, because the other team's not going to feel bad for you. So it's easy to do it when you're playing well. They're on a 10-game win streak. They're the hottest team in the country. You know, they'll stub their toe. You know, and they'll have to be able to play with that same way. So it's on both. But as a player, you always have to have confidence, because confidence is probably 90% of this game, to be honest.
You mentioned after the game that if they stay together, then that they're close to getting over this hump. How has practice, how's the kind of fallout been from that game?
It was good. I mean, the guys stay together. You know, for me, it's about continuing to push them, because this time of year, right, we're 15 games in, 16 games in, it becomes hard to stay focused every single day on the grind. And like, if you start to look at the schedule in its totality, you're like, shit, like, excuse my French, but like, when do we get a break? Like, and there's not one on there. And so it takes the coaches to continue to push those buttons to say, hey, if we want to do this, there's no way out. You got to go through. There's no outs. There's no one here to save you. You got to go through it, and you got to deal with it every single day. And then you got to watch the teams around the league and see that everybody's dealing with the same stuff. So it was intense. It's probably a little bit more confrontational today, but that's okay.
Woody's been playing quite a bit here lately. We mentioned in the preseason how he's kind of your last stretch forward left. What have you thought of his performances?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting better. You know, Woody's probably a classic of what I was just talking about. Like, he doesn't have supreme confidence. He needs to get supreme confidence. Like, at some point in his life, he thought he was a really good player. And you can't, for a myriad of reasons, right? He hasn't gone the way he hoped coming into college, whether it be Syracuse or here so far. And there are things that have been outside of his control, right? Dad passing, he played his first season through the pandemic, he had COVID, you know, he's been sick here and there. But there are things in your control that you got to master, right? And if he does that, then he'll be a big difference maker on what we can do as a team.
You mentioned Bernie earlier. Have you had a better screener than Bernard Coombe, you think?
I don't know if I've ever seen a better screener. Maybe the kid that we're going to play against, Flo Thamba from Baylor. I mean, he's kind of made a living there. It's crazy to think about, you know, all the great players they have had, and obviously circumstances helped this, but I think he's their all-time winningest player. You know,
Been there 35 years.
He's been there a while. And I thought he was done, and then I looked up and I realized he was still playing for him. But yeah, Bernie, he takes pride in it. He understands that there's value to be added to the team by doing that, helping your teammates get open. And then sometimes you just fall into a one-foot shot yourself. You know, I'll tell you guys something that you probably don't know. When Cade was here, Cade wanted Bernie on the court as much as anybody out there because of that. He understood the value of helping him, right, when teams were guarding him the way they were, of him being out there with them. And so, yeah, I haven't coached one. I don't know if I played with one, but he's tremendous at it.
can you get him and Flo to set screens on each other on Saturday just once?
Ooh.
Just so we could just see it?
We're not looking for an earthquake in Waco. Or get home.
Yeah. Keontae George, too, is a guy you recruited to. What have you kind of seen from him?
Oh man, supreme confidence, and it's a unique thing to have as a young person going through this league. If you watched any of the game last night, some of the shots he's able to believe he can make, because you're like, man, that's okay. I guess it's going in, But he plays with such a swagger that he believes he's the best guy on the court every time he's out there, no matter who the other 9 are. And there's a big part of the reason he's having the success he's had early, and obviously he's playing for a coach who's allowing him to be himself, which not a lot of people would give freshmen that kind of authority, I guess, within the program. And obviously his teammates have bought into it as well.
Mike, I saw last night just on ESPN an alert saying the NCAA had approved like another assistant coach. I'm not sure, A, if you'd seen that, and B, could you just kind of explain to me what that means for you?
So I don't know if it's been voted on yet, but it's been recommended to the board, I think is how it works, by the council that makes recommendations for changes. And I think it's been across several sports, adding staff members and being able to kind of expand their responsibilities. And so for us in particular, it allows for like Keaton Page to do a little bit more, which he's really, really good as a coach anyway, but allows him to be a coach and not just more or less administrator, right, within the staff. And then probably to a lesser degree, allowing like your video guy to maybe work with the guys a little bit more than just the head coach and 3 assistants, which right now is what we're limited to in terms of on the court coaching and instruction. So I think it's good. There's a lot of young guys trying to break into the business, trying to figure out a way to learn and get better, and this gives them another opportunity to do that.
I think it was like a few weeks ago, the NCAA also said like maybe we should look into expanding our championship fields to 25%. That would be 91 teams in the tournament. What are your thoughts on expansion in the?
I haven't really thought much about it, and I don't usually do this, but I want to respectfully give you an answer. I don't know if I love the idea, but I do know that every kid should have an opportunity to experience the NCAA tournament. It's the best event, period. I mean, and so more opportunities wouldn't necessarily make me upset. I don't know if I would vote for it. I certainly wouldn't suggest it. But if more kids have an opportunity to experience what that's like, the better.
We talked last week about wanting to see more, or expecting more consistency out of Caleb Boone, After his last couple games, you kind of feel like he's kind of grasping that a little more, or do you kind of need to see more of it?
No, I mean, I want to give the kid credit. I mean, if you go back over his game log for his career, I don't know if he's had a 3-game stretch where he's played this well. So I want to give him credit for doing it. I also want him to realize that you can keep doing it, and I want to get ahead of myself. Don't know what's going to happen next year, right? If he decides this is something he wants to continue to do, if he wants to move on with his life. But if it is, then make the most of the opportunity. Let's not take it for granted. This game is hard to play. And so every time you get a chance to do it, just go out there and do the best you can and enjoy it. And when he's having fun and he's competing the way he's capable of, he's a really, really good player.
There were a couple times early Tuesday where you probably didn't hear the double coming. How do you guys practice that in a raucous arena like that whenever he's got 2 guys coming to him?
Well, we do a lot of individual instruction. Coach Blunt works with those guys fairly often. And we know just based on scouting which teams are more likely to double. And so it becomes a little bit more scout-based this time of year, but it's something we work on in the offseason quite a bit. Not necessarily with the noise, but kind of how to visualize, what your read should be once you catch the ball.